the bottom of your Zoom panel. And with that, I just want to say I'm really excited to be leading this topic today because when I took this job in 2022, one of my goals was to become the tech expert of career services. And my interest was peaked last year when I was working with some PhD students from the iSchool on their dissertation. And I was so impressed by how much the capabilities of AI. So I've spent my summer of 23 learning about ChatGPT and other generative AIs like Windjammer and JobScan. And we are very excited to share our knowledge with you today. And we have a lot of information and a lot of people. So we will take questions at the end, and you can put them in the Q&A. And with that, I'm going to turn it over to Dr. Yi Hao, who's going to be leading the first half of our session today. And go ahead, Dr. Hao.
Thank you, Hardeep. Just so you know, I also started the recording. And if you could please advance to the next slide so people can see our names and our affiliation. So as Hardeep mentioned, he's with the School of Public Policy, and I'm with the graduate school. So we're both very excited to be co-hosting this event today and sharing how we have utilized ChatGPT in our respective roles in helping Terps to either get promoted or get jobs. Next slide, please. Before we get started, we've shared a little bit about ourselves. We'd like to gauge where you are from our audience. So in thinking about AI or ChatGPT, you probably have heard a lot about it. We'd like to know if you have used generative AI or ChatGPT or any related tools. If so, what kind of occasions or things or tasks you might have used it for. Please feel free to use the chat. Okay, we already have a lot of answers coming in. So some people have used it for resume, cover letter writing, to understand concepts, to compile data, planning trips, awesome. To analyze job descriptions. In terms of other kinds of generative AI out there, some people have used Google Bard as an alternative, writing thank you letters, brainstorming, content creation, proofreading. Awesome. And it's okay also if you have never used ChatGPT or generative AI in your life. As more answers coming in, and as we get into the second portion of this presentation, you will be able to see some of the examples in live action, and then maybe some of the answers you're seeing in the chat and some of the content that we present today will inspire you to give some of the tools a try. So we'll advance to the next slide, please. So to give you a quick overview of what we are going to cover today, so I'll be leading the first portion to give you an overview of ChatGPT as a tool and then some of the things that you may want to know before you try, or if you already have been a user, some additional considerations for you to think about. Then Hardeep is going to lead a demonstration and with examples to help you think about different things you can do to explore your careers, to use ChatGPT for networking purposes and for other application materials. And then we'll summarize the session and provide you with some resources and then get into some of the questions you might have. We don't claim that we are experts of ChatGPT or generative AI by any means, but since we work in career development, career services, we do get a lot of questions from students, from people we work with. So we try to structure today's session through that lens so that hopefully the content will help you in your career journey or in your professional life to find ways to incorporate this useful tool. Next slide, please. Yeah, so to get us started on ChatGPT, so many of you may have heard of the term, right? So ChatGPT is has been created by the Open Artificial Intelligence Company for a while now, and GPT really stands for Generative Pre-trained Transformer. It's a name given by the company. And then we'll go to the next slide to define what we mean by the use of AI, right? So here, like I mentioned, we're really trying to focus on the use of AI to help you think about job search and career development. And so it kind of provides this like conversational tool. So in the past, for those of you who have been familiar with coding or working with computers, humans, in order to communicate with computers, will need to write codes. But now with AI, being able to use natural language processing models, it provides a conversational kind of environment for us to have a conversation, ask our questions, and then so it's kind of an advanced way for us to get information from a variety of resources. So we're focusing on using AI as a tool, and also we'll highlight some of the things that you might want to be aware of in order to take some steps to protect your privacy as you're leveraging this tool in your own kind of professional or personal use. Next slide, please. So some of the ways that from the conversation or the chat that people have already shared that they've been using generative AI or ChatGPT in their personal or professional use are kind of captured here also. So a lot of people use it for idea generation or brainstorming, especially if you have a new project and sometimes you have no idea what you want to start. Just by popping that that question into ChatGPT, it can get you going and kind of have some ideas going. If you're often write for your personal or professional life. You can also use ChatGPT to draft or edit the writing that you've had. And it's great for catching grammar mistakes or catching phrasing things or making stylistic changes. Like what we've seen in the chat, some people also use ChatGPT for quick consultations because it is created in a way that you feel like you're having a conversation. So it makes like consultation with ChatGPT or similar tools really easy. And some people also have mentioned that they've used it for coding, and I've had students telling me too that sometimes if they got stuck with coding or other kinds of technical tasks, they also have used ChatGPT for assistance. And we've all been situations where sometimes we don't have time to read a very long paragraph or a long article, but we need to know very quickly what's kind of being talked about or what are the key takeaways from an article. So ChatGPT is also great for information retrieval and summarization. And then lastly, of course, you can also use it for personalized learning because of the conversational nature. You can ask follow-up questions about a same topic, and then you can also customize your learning. I've seen other people use ChatGPT to learn new language, which is really helpful as you may recall from learning a new language, a lot of times you feel that you're kind of frustrated or scared in talking to people, but ChatGPT provides a great safe environment for doing that. So next slide, please. And since we've talked a little bit about some of the ways that ChatGPT or other generative AI tools may help you, we also want to mention some of the things that you want to consider, possibly, shortcomings or downsides when you're using ChatGPT. So one of the things that's very important in career development or job searching process is kind of highlighting your authentic voice or presenting your authentic self. And sometimes we use the word building your own brand or having your kind of branding very unique to yourself. That's very important throughout this process. We do want to highlight that while we are talking about ways that it can help you, generative AIs cannot personalize or customize or build your brand for you because it doesn't know your history. While it may have your copy of resume, it still doesn't get to the full extent of your experiences, your history, and all the lessons you've learned and the kind of the emotional aspect of these experiences as well. So it can never replace the authentic voice of yours. And then, of course, there are privacy concerns. So one way that generative AIs are built is using publicly available data from the internet, right? So in a way, you can think of if you don't want to put something on social media or publicly available online, you probably don't want to put the same content into ChatGPT or other AI tools as well, because that's one way how some organizations are using these data or inputs to help train the natural language processing model to become better. And thirdly, the responses that you get from ChatGPT could be inaccurate, incomplete, or even biased because of the nature that it's outsourcing its data from what's out there. So if a topic is already leaning towards a certain direction and you want to get a full picture, using ChatGPT may only reflect a certain direction that you're seeing from public opinions or what's available out there. It will never give you a full image. So whatever outcomes that you're getting from ChatGPT, it's very important for you to assess the accuracy and how good the answer is before you utilize it into your own materials or use it for any other content. And lastly, we kind of talked about, and it's very important for you to know that there are privacy concerns about not sharing your own personal data or anything that you don't want to share out with the world. It's also important to know on the flip side, right? So ChatGPT may be utilizing other people's intellectual property in order to generate responses without giving credit to people. So recently I've heard news about in Hollywood, writers are kind of being very concerned and going on strike about the use of generative AI. So I think that's also very important for us to mention that we should have a healthy respect for the people who have their intellectual property potentially being inappropriately used by other platforms. Next slide, please. So now that we've talked about both of the positives and the negatives of using these tools, I want to talk a little bit about prompt engineering, which is really the key to success in leveraging these tools. We've all used Google trying to figure out answers to questions, and oftentimes what kind of answer you get from these searches really depends on how good your question is. So very similarly, ChatGPT, when you are putting a question or a prompt into the chat, how you phrase the question really leads to how, effectively ChatGPT is able to generate a response to you. So we'll talk a little bit about what's some of the best practices on the next slide, please. So with prompt engineering, I think the first two principles about being clear and simple are very self-explanatory. So you do want to kind of being very clear on what you're trying to get out of the question, and also keep the response short so that it's easy for the machine to understand. But for the next one, especially in the job search and career development context, a lot of times that probably where you want to go into next. For instance, if you're currently in government, but you want to pivot into tech, maybe good for you to provide that context to ChatGPT so that it can provide you with information that's more tailored to the tech industry instead of like trying to talk about like something that's more generic to a lot of different fields. Similarly, you can also include job titles or the specific tasks or goals that you're trying to achieve into that contextual information. Also being very specific about how you want to utilize the content, right? So it's very similar to context, but if you want ChatGPT to spell out an answer in a certain way, you can give instructions to ChatGPT asking for, hey, please write your response in a paragraph style with different headings, and you will see some of that examples in the demonstration as well. And then lastly, because it's a conversational tool, right? So ChatGPT actually plays really well when you assign roles to it. Especially in the kind of job search scenario, if you are trying to practice interview, right, on the screen, you see that this is a prompt that you can use. For instance, you can tell ChatGPT to pretend that you are a Microsoft engineer and I'm an interviewee for a junior software engineer role. Please generate 3 questions you might ask when interviewing me. So then it's very clear about what the role is and what you're asking for from ChatGPT. Next slide, please. And then some of the tips, because we're kind of moving from the principles to some structures that you might think about when you are writing prompts. For the first one is RTF, which stands for role, task, and format. So give a very specific role, like the last example we talked about, outline the task and specify the format. Similarly, you can change the R into C, which stands for context. And then lastly, a more comprehensive way that you can ask a ChatGPT to spell out information is by combining the role, the action, the steps, the context, examples, and format. So we'll see some of the examples coming up. Next slide, please. All right, I think that's a quick overview for ChatGPT, and then we're going to transition to Hardeep and for a demonstration.
All right. Well, thank you, Yi. That was very helpful, and I think it was a good overview of what ChatGPT can do and some of the principles that we want to think about when we're using ChatGPT. So most of you should have gotten the email to set up your account. For this portion of the workshop, we're going to actually be using ChatGPT. I'll be putting some prompts in and showing you the results. And we can also talk about what we can do with these results. So go ahead and log into ChatGPT if you haven't done so already. And I will go ahead and pull mine up in just a second here as we go to the next slide. So ChatGPT. So did it move to ChatGPT on my screen? Okay, great. So this is what it's going to look like. And one of the most common things that I like to use it for when I'm working with my students is helping them explore careers. And this would be a prompt that we've used in consultation and student appointments. And this particular student had worked in sales, but didn't want to do that anymore and wanted to look at careers that combined certain skills, but didn't want to go into sales. So the role is career expert. The task is listing the careers and making sure that they're not sales. I didn't put a format just because it defaults to the conversational format, which is what I was looking for. And my result was this. And so this is only a partial list of what ChatGPT gave me. And as you can see, it gives a very brief overview of what these careers are. And from there, you can use this information to further explore these careers or ask it to regenerate the list or output as you see fit. So in this next screen, we're going to talk about how we can use ChatGPT for the resume. So the third bullet, the one that's in bold, is the one I'm going to be using. Oops. Sorry. And so I'm going to go ahead and type that prompt into ChatGPT, and we're going to see what happens as a group. Oops. Sorry. So ChatGPT here on the bottom. Let me just. So I want you to help me write my master resume, meaning my entire work history since I graduated. Now I could just go with it right here, but the prompts it's gonna provide would not be that sufficient. So that's why I want to add the extra detail. So I'm gonna ask it to focus on all my experience that I've had since December 2011. So I graduated in December 2011. And yeah, you don't necessarily need to be grammatically correct, like with the capitalization and things like that. It is a pretty smart tool. And I want to highlight my accomplishments with my jobs. And then and then I don't want it just to list my duties. I wanted to list my accomplishments. Ask me questions to help me to learn what my accomplishment and achievements are.
Have you loaded your resume to this? How is it reading your highlights and accomplishments?
It's gonna ask me questions. So when I put this prompt together, the idea was that there was nothing written and that I'm trying to generate something from scratch for this particular prompt. You can upload your resume in there. I'm very hesitant to do that because you can't really protect your data that way. Like, if you put your name and your identifying information, I don't really think that's wise to put that onto ChatGPT. Like we mentioned, anything you input into ChatGPT is equivalent to putting it on Twitter or Instagram or any other social media. So while I do use it for parts of my resume, I wouldn't put like my whole resume in. I would put like one bullet in and ask it to work on that. But let's go ahead and see what the output is based on this prompt. And so, as we can see, it starts by asking some basic information like job title, company, duration, and the major things. Now, if I'm having trouble coming up with that information, I would ask it to maybe ask questions to jog my memory. But for this thing, so I'm going to put, for this one, so I'm going to use my own personal experience for this. So I was an office supervisor and I held that job from December 2011 till May 2014. So May 2014. I don't want to put the company name for my own privacy concerns, but if you feel comfortable doing that, go ahead. I'm not going to, just because I want to keep it relatively anonymous. Key responsibilities, providing customer service to students, ensuring operational efficiency, and scheduling my subordinates. So this is what it's going to give me. Now it's asking me for like more information about projects I've led, improvements I've implemented, or any recognition I received. So I received 2 awards for outstanding service to students in 2012 and 2013. I improved the budgeting process and designed a Black History Month exhibit. And so it's kind of giving me some of the basics. This format might not be what I would necessarily use in a resume, but I could take this and copy it into a Word document and start formatting it as I see fit and providing a little more detail as I see fit, and making sure that the bullets that I'm providing highlight the impact of the work that I had. So that's one of the ways I would like to use, I would recommend using ChatGPT. Then the second, the last bullet, the last prompt on this slide that says evaluate this bullet on a resume. I use this kind of a prompt when students are like, if they've worked in a private sector job and they want to go into the federal government, or if they've just been, or if they're trying to get into the federal service. I think a resume bullet that has context, challenge, action, result is going to be necessary. So I'm going to go ahead and put that in the prompt. And I do have a bullet that one of our students provided. So I'm going to be inputting that bullet into the prompt as well for ChatGPT to evaluate. I would encourage you, for everybody who's watching, to try and do this with a bullet on your own resume and to do it at the same time as I am, just to get a feel of how ChatGPT is working and then what we can do with these prompts. So, oops, sorry. So, evaluate this. What? And this text that I'm pulling, somebody gave me their consent to use this. And so I just want to make that clear, like this is somebody else's information that I'm using for today's workshop. So that's the bullet, and then let's see what the output is. So that's not a bad output, right? But if I'm applying for a federal job, or if I'm applying for a federal job, I would definitely want them to be combined, because on a federal resume, the bullets that we need to provide are they need to be like long, detailed sentences. So I would say regenerate, but combine them into one sentence. And so if I'm happy with that, I could just, copy it to my clipboard and put it into the document, right? But let's say I want it to be more creative, or more, I want the tone to change. So I could say regenerate. And if I want it to be more creative, I would say temperature +1. Oops, that's not how you spell temperature. Or if I want it to be more formal, I would say temperature -1. So we're going to try the more creative one right here. And let's see what happens. And so that's one of the ways you can start to modify, customize, edit, and really refine the outputs that you're getting. And I think it's very important that as users of ChatGPT or any generative AI, that we acknowledge that this step needs to be taken, because, as we mentioned earlier, ChatGPT doesn't really know your history. It doesn't know your brand. It doesn't know a lot of those things that, like, what makes you you. And so as we're using it, we need to keep that in mind and make sure that the outputs that we are receiving are in line with our brand and are written in a way that lines up with our own writing style or communication style. So those are some of the ways I would use it for a resume. Then a cover letter is is another common way that I want to talk about with you all today. And one of the things that's pretty common for some of the students that I work with, and I've seen this also with some of our alumni, they might have a gap in their employment history due to one of the most common ones that I've come across is illness, or maybe they went on maternity leave or something like that. But the point is, like, ChatGPT can kind of give you a template to start your cover letter, and you don't necessarily need to put your full resume in there to get the framework of a cover letter. So on this slide here, we're gonna use this last prompt that's in bold that says, help me write a cover letter that addresses the gap in my employment history. And let's see what ChatGPT provides us. All right, so help me write. All right, so here's what ChatGPT is going to give us. So it's given me this one sentence right here, which isn't bad, but it's not really something I would necessarily use when I'm writing a cover letter or if I was to send that out as a cover letter. So I would say regenerate as a first person, and highlight the fact that I have a track record of high achievement. And again, I didn't give ChatGPT too much just because this is like an opening to the cover letter. And I wanted to make sure that it's giving me something to start with. And so this is, again, not bad, but I would keep regenerating it until I get the right output. And you can use the temperature trick that I mentioned earlier, or you could also tell it, like, I don't like it. Like, I think it's important to give ChatGPT feedback. So you can say, I don't like this. Please regenerate with something drastically different. And I think it's really important that when you're getting an output like this that's not really helpful, I think it's really important to make sure you tell ChatGPT that you don't like it. And like what you want it to generate instead. I think giving it specificity or giving it more detail will ultimately improve the quality of the output. And so this is a little bit better. And from there, I could actually work with this. So I would start incorporating this into my cover letter and then bringing up the other elements of the cover letter, like how my experience and education help make me the strong candidate for these roles. All right, so next I want to talk about interview prep. So ChatGPT's as an interview prep is not its greatest strength. There are definitely better AIs for interview prep, but I do think, whoops. But I do think it can be helpful if, for example, you're applying for a very technical role, like many of our engineering students are applying for technical roles that they might not necessarily know how to prepare for, or so they might have some technical questions. So consider yourself a hiring manager for an engineering role and generate a list of technical questions based on this job description. And so I'm going to input this prompt, and I did pull an engineering job description to paste into ChatGPT. So I will do that as well. So let's watch. Let's see how this goes. And I see there are a bunch of comments in the chat. I'll get to those shortly. And so everything in this this is an actual job posting from USA Jobs that I'm uploading into ChatGPT, and let's see what it puts out. And so these are 11 questions. If that's too many or not enough, I could ask for more or less. And if there's a particular question that I don't think they would ask, I would just tell it to remove it or rephrase it. And so then the next thing I would do is I would start, I would write these questions down and then start thinking about how I would answer it. You can put your response as a written reply in ChatGPT and ask it to evaluate, but I don't know that that's the best usage of ChatGPT. I would encourage you to use some of the other AIs like Big Interview and things like that for interview prep when you're using generative AI. Then I'm going to run through these last three because I do want to ensure we have at least 15 minutes for questions. So the next thing I would also encourage you to use ChatGPT for is networking. I think networking is the second part of job searching. Like, you need to be doing it at the same time as your job searching. And tomorrow we're actually hosting an in-person networking event here on campus in Riggs from 6 to 8. It's going to be alumni from many schools, including public policy, business, journalism, and the iSchool. And I would encourage all of you to come and start making some connections. But when we come to these networking events, it's hard for us to have an elevator pitch. Not everybody knows or has a good one. Or maybe it's been a while since you've been to a networking event and you need help writing one. So this first prompt, the one that's in bold, is something that a couple of our students have come to me with. And so I'm going to use this prompt as well as a profile summary from someone's resume to help design the elevator pitch. So let me copy and then paste this into ChatGPT. And Laura, if you can go ahead and post the link for the networking event in the chat so people can look at it and RSVP if they are interested. So, and then here is the professional summary that I got permission to use for today's event. And so I've put in this professional summary from someone's resume along with the prompt, and let's see what it gives us. Okay, so I would say, like, I'm not unhappy with this, but I would also but I would like to regenerate it just to see some alternative ways of conveying that same message. So I would say regenerate, but make it more conversation. And so this second one might be more in line with what I would do. But either way, I would take both of these and start thinking about which one is more in line with my own communication style and which one really helps me achieve my goal of finding a new role in my current industry. Or the goal of finding that's not my goal at the moment, but the goal of this prompt was to find a new role within the industry. Then the next thing I want to emphasize is using it on LinkedIn or Terrapins Connect. For those of you who aren't aware, Terrapins Connect is our alumni association's own online community of UMD alumni. Everyone who's in there is there because they want to connect with Terps to help them advance their careers. It's a lot like LinkedIn, but the main difference is they aren't going to be monetizing you many of the features aren't hidden behind a paywall or anything like that. And so two of the things that I would really recommend using it for is writing personalized connection requests. And whether you're on Terrapins Connect or LinkedIn, it's very helpful to do this. It helps establish the reasoning for your connection request, as well as establishing the fact that you're not a spam bot. So we're at 12:45 right now. I don't really want to do any more demos. I want to turn it over to the question portion of our workshop. And so let's go ahead, and there's a lot of things in the chat that I didn't get to see. But so yeah, we can go ahead and open it up to questions now and either put them in the Q&A, or you can come off, unmute, and turn on your camera, but keep in mind we're still recording.
I think we can go ahead and start with the two questions in the Q&A already. So the first one is about any online prompt engineering course that you like to recommend. I personally haven't taken any courses because I'm not at the level where I need to understand sort of the technical aspect of it. But if you're interested in more on like how to use ChatGPT for career development resources, there are LinkedIn learning courses, and on some other learning platforms, there are some short courses that can be helpful for that. And I was going to let Hardeep take a crack at this one too.
Yeah, I would definitely say the LinkedIn learning course is very helpful. A couple of our colleagues have done that and found it to be helpful. I would also, we are going to be sending out this slide as the presentation as a PDF to all the attendees. And we have a resources page, and on that resources page, we list this website called The Neuron. And they provide an extremely detailed PDF that I would recommend using because it highlights different ways you can prompt engineer and how you can maximize that usage. Then the second question, let's see. Per ChatGPT is pulling information from an outdated database or an older version of the internet. So there are better, different tools to use. Is that true? Yes, they are using in the free version, which is what we use, ChatGPT 3.5. They are using things up until 2021. So it is somewhat limited. If you're willing to go into the pay version, I believe it's much more current. And there are, I don't know about different or better tools to use. I would, play with like things like Windjammer, Job Scanner, and things like that. It just depends on what your goal is with the generative AI. Are you looking to just do resumes, or are you looking to do like content and things like that? Depending on your goal, that would help determine what kind of AI you use. And then the next question is, what AI do you recommend for interview prep instead of ChatGPT? So there's a couple. The first I would say is Big Interview that you can get through Handshake, and I believe our alumni can now have access to Handshake. And then Google has Google Interview Warm-Up as well, which is a pretty solid one. It's obviously it's a little more focused on prepping for tech roles or tech jobs, being as it's Google. And then LinkedIn's free interview warm-up tool is also a pretty good one.
I'll quickly add for interview prep, I think it's helpful for you to get a list of questions using the free ChatGPT version. But really, I think sometimes just having your phone and then trying to answer your questions live can help you improve your practice a lot. Because oftentimes we feel like we know what we're trying to say, but until you said it or said it in front of someone else or trying to have yourself recorded, your answer, you wouldn't notice how your answers could be restructured much better to kind of have a summary sentence to begin and to end, those kind of things. So I would say for interview prep, right, depending on which stage you are at the interview, you don't need a lot of fancy tools other than just trying to really answer and practicing those things out loud. And then for the other question too, if you're trying to use generative AI for doing research on companies, especially for those bigger companies, you can still use like Google Bard or Bing, which is by Microsoft, to get more updated information if you're doing research on company news. So that could be a way. I think we're trying to say that, we both have. I have only used the free version and I find it to be pretty comprehensive. And when you use other tools like Google or anything else, you can still get a lot out of it without having to pay.
There is one question in the chat that talked about the purpose of the temperature. I just want to quickly address that. So, one of the respondents did point out that it is about the formality. So reducing the temperature is more formal and increasing the temperature is more informal, or as they like to say, more creative. And the scale is infinite. I definitely like to use that as opposed to say regenerate and make it more professional. Like you can do that and it's not bad, but I think by giving it the temperature and a number like that we want to increase or decrease by, it helps the generative AI understand what we're looking for. And then, all right, so then there was another Q&A. What about using AI to find and compile contacts of potential companies? To search for, I don't think it can do it the way you're describing. I think it would, if you're looking to get, like search for people by title, I think you're better off looking at like LinkedIn or like a company's page or maybe a professional association. I think ChatGPT might be able to give you some prompts or search queries that you could use, but I don't know that it would be able to perform the task in the way that you've described. So, okay, then there's a question. Is there a way to use ChatGPT to identify opportunities you would be qualified? So that's okay. Like, I do think you can use it to explore opportunities like I did in that first prompt. I don't know that it can necessarily identify the specific job postings. Like, it can give you some roles to search for or job titles to search for, but I don't know that it can necessarily find the actual positions that you could apply for. That might be something that could be happening in the future, but as far as I know right now, I don't think it can, and I'm not sure if there is a generative AI that does that.
Yeah, I'm not aware of that either.
Did we discuss how general? No, we did not. I think that's one of those things, like, I know from some of our colleagues in other colleges here on campus that has become an issue with hiring managers, that what ended up happening was multiple students applied for the same role and they all used ChatGPT to generate their cover letter, which is a good thing, but they didn't personalize it. And what ended up happening was the employer received 20 versions of the same cover letter from 20 different applicants. And if that's not a big red flag, I don't know what is. But I think when employers see things that don't really have specifics, or if they aren't able to really discern what the impact is, or really see like the story, I think that'll be like a red flag. It might not necessarily be that they think you're using AI, but they might not feel you're the best qualified candidate.
I think I want to quickly add is, I think it depends really on the hiring manager's AI literacy in some way. But for those of us who have been on search committees, when you're reading a cover letter or resume, it's very easy for you to tell if someone has spent time or putting any effort to customize it to the job description. You don't even need to tell if like it's populated by ChatGPT, but I think people are looking for those direct connections that you're identifying through your own experiences to the questions or opportunities that they're trying to solve within the organization. So I think that's more of like what you choose the AI tool to help you with, instead of just like kind of getting the answer straight from ChatGPT and use it for what it is.
Thank you. Great answer, Yi. In terms of privacy, what can go wrong if you gave it ChatGPT your whole resume, excluding your contact information? So there, like, in terms of going wrong, like, if there is a data breach within OpenAI or anything, so anything that we give them is theirs. And like, I would be hesitant that I don't necessarily want all my like personal, like my work product going out into the public domain without, my consent or having some control of how it's used. And then I would also say that like it can, give you incorrect information, or it might tell you to do something that it might give you inaccurate information. That's why, like, one of the things that we say is like when deciding whether or not you should use ChatGPT is definitely ask yourself, can you determine the accuracy of the output? And so I think like it can like remodel your resume and things like that. But I would just be careful, because you don't just be careful and with what you put on the internet, because it's out there for anybody to see. And then as Delisha mentioned, avoid using it for a serious writing, because it is considered plagiarism. And thank you for that, Delisha. I appreciate you. Then what was the next question I missed? UMD resources for one-on-one help. Resume writing for government positions. They are very specific what they look for. You're right, Holly. They are very specific. A federal resume is way longer, way more detailed, and way more just everything. I would say like I don't know if they have a federal resume template at the moment, but I would look at gogovernment.org. We can put that in the website or in the chat, excuse me. GoGovernment is a nonprofit that's committed to helping the federal government recruit new employees. And then I would also look, like when I'm writing a resume for a bullet or a federal resume, I would make sure each bullet has the context, challenge, action, result formula that we talked about, as well, or another formula or way to write your bullets is what you did, how you did it, why you did it, and what the result. Like when you apply for federal jobs, you kind of have to write the resume under the assumption that the person reading your resume doesn't know much about anything. Like I'm a federal career advisor, so this is kind of my wheelhouse. And so I think the more detail you can provide for your federal resume, the more helpful it will be. And a federal resume is easily going to become 5 pages. There's a few agencies that expect you to do that. And so I would also look at the agency's careers page and see what agency specific requirements are. What site did I reference? Go Government, Open Government. It's Go Government. Just give me a second. I'll put it in the chat. And all right. So let me go ahead and pull that up, and feel free to ask any other questions while I do that. All right, so Holly and everybody else, if you look in the chat, I just pasted a link. The Go Government website with the federal application. And I do want to keep our train running on time. So it is 12:59. Do we have any more questions? All right, well, it looks like all right, so there is one question, and I want to say thank you to everybody who came and for being such an engaged audience as well. So standing out, I think, whether you're using ChatGPT or writing it yourself, I think it's really highlighting the fact, like using numbers and things to highlight your accomplishments and achievements, as well as the cover letter, which really highlights your why. Like, why do you want this role and what's making you pursue it? I think those 2 steps, regardless of what position you're applying for and what steps or what type of position you're applying for, I think those 2 steps will really help your resume stand out from the field. Anything here? All right.
I think I'm gonna stop recording.
Yeah, please do.